What's up, nerds? We're here to talk to you about a very hot
sultry
topic. Sultry?
Yeah.
Is it sultry?
Sure, it is now.
What's up, nerds? We want to talk about a hot topic in the bass fishing industry right now. For better or for worse, it's forward-facing sonar, but more specifically, forward-facing sonar baits. FFS baits,
Or just FF.
FS.
Some combination of F's and S's.
There's a lot of acronyms floating around right now, you guys, but here's the deal. There are companies proposing that they are making baits specifically for forward-facing sonars as if baits that work on forward-facing sonars never existed.
Or don't work as well.
They're brand new, right? So we wanted to dive into this topic a little bit. We did some research, if you will, and we actually picked up some of these baits too. And if you guys don't know, we do have Garmin Panoptics. At least one of us does now, because I sold my boat with my Panoptics and you gave me yours, so I have the forward-facing sonar now. But we will be able to test these out to really see, like, do these, you know, some of these Berkley baits, some of the Yum minnows that we picked up, like, are they really better than very similar baits on forward-facing sonar? All right, so Paul, what are forward-facing sonar baits?
Well, so that's actually the whole purpose of the video, is to try and help you understand what is marketing BS, another acronym there for you, and
what is actual science,
and what is like a legit improvement on like an existing bait that can help you out if you're a forward-facing sonar fisherman. So I think a great example and kind of an easy place to pick these apart is the bait itself going to show up on the screen better? Or is it a new technique or like a twist on a technique that helps take advantage of forward-facing sonar better? If it's one of those two things or some version of that, then I say it's not marketing BS, it's actual
it's a real deal.
Science, and it's actually helping you take full advantage of your forward-facing sonar.
You still use quotes.
I know, because is it really science?
If they wore lab coats and goggles, it's science.
If there was goggles, then it's just science, not science. Let's talk about some real-world examples. So I think Berkley is sort of taking one of the biggest leaps into saying they are making. The flag. Yeah, they really were like Sourcing right in the middle.
So and they got 3 baits. Yeah. Let's show them right here.
You can just Google Berkley forward-facing sonar baits, and this whole site will pop up.
Yep.
And there's 3 baits that are on there.
Number 1.
The Credge.
The Credge, which if you don't know is jerk, spelled backwards.
And not jerk as in like rude person, jerk bait.
Here's how I want to picture this. Somebody put on a lab coat and they had the goggles on, and they were like, they looked in a mirror at jerk and they were like, you guys.
No, they had a jerk t-shirt on. And I was like, oh, I got it!
Like, it's the Credge. Anyways, all jokes aside, the Credge is jerk bait, but the lip is upwards. It's backwards.
Yeah, it's upside down, flipped, right? And so what it does is it shoots upwards and then it kind of comes back. So as you lift your rod tip, it goes up, and then instead of just going straight down, it actually comes backwards towards your original target. So you get like this motion instead of just a jerkbait motion.
And we probably played video clips of that over top of this.
We sure did.
Do that? We probably did.
100%.
The next one is the Power Bait Power Switch.
Yep.
It's a pre-rigged swim bait with like a little finessey tail on it. And it's designed really for like mid-strolling, essentially, which mid-strolling is like the hot thing. People think it's hover strolling. It's not really. It's mid-strolling. It's just lower in the water column. Point is, we already know, because we've talked about it on lives. We had raw fishing on our live when we talked about this a little bit. And we've talked about hover rigs and hover strolling in previous unboxings. Well, the strolling techniques are great for forward-facing sonar. That's a technique specific to forward-facing sonar.
There you
go.
So
of course it's going to work. So there's that bait.
And then there's the finisher. So the finisher is a hard bait, dual treble, and you can fish it a lot of different ways. You can let it sink straight down a little bit faster. You can run it down the middle. There's a lot of different options for that one too. So there are other brands doing this too. So like Yum has the FFS Sonar Minnow.
And ball head jig. So it's paired specifically with a ball head jig, which is, oh look.
We'll show it to you.
Right here.
You hold on to that really sharp thing right there.
Great. So here's the jig. Just kind of a big old ball head jig there. We do like the hook on this bad boy.
I do.
Have yet to fish this, but I'm excited to try it out. Get a pack of 3 of those. And again, this is where the marketing piece is going to come in a little bit later. Like, are they upping the price on these because it's forward-facing specific?
And you're going to pair that up with just a sort of fork tail. A lot of these are vertical, horizontal, doesn't really matter. But you're going to pair that up with this little plastic minnow right there. So have people been using those? Yeah, a bunch. So
they've existed for a long time is the point, right? So that what we're getting into is like the marketing side of this, which is, okay, are we just putting forward facing on this packaging.
Yes.
And then adding $2 to the cost.
And we said, oh, we did it. We made a forward-facing bait. So let's talk about this real quick. Forward-facing sonar is basically, I mean, the easiest way to explain it is basically just an ice fishing live version of normal sonar, but it's facing forward instead of in ice fishing down.
You can see what's in front of you essentially. As
happening live.
As good as a sonar can show you what you're saying. So it's not a camera, but it's like a very
It's almost better than a camera because you get, you can see like contrast, like bright green, orange, yellow against a black backdrop.
You got your structure, you can see moving objects, your fish, and all sorts of stuff like that. So you can figure out what the heck is going on.
Well, let's just go through Berkeley. Let's go through Berkeley and let's try and just take those as examples because they're saying these are for forward-facing sonar. Let's take those as examples of, is it just a technique that has long existed but works very well with forward-facing sonar? Or is it something new that we've introduced that is either a twist on a technique or a new technique or a bait that has been changed in some way so that it pops on the screen better, shows up better, or makes forward-facing sonar easier for you to interact with? Because I think that's what we're looking for. Because like a drop shot, been around forever, we all have used it before, but it's one of those techniques that's not really often great for search baiting. It's more like, oh, I know there's a fish, or I think there's a fish right in that very specific spot. I've flipped my drop shot up there, and then I'm going to finesse that fish out.
And we do this all the time when we're fishing because we ran the Garmin Panoptics all last year, and drop shot was just one of the great examples next to a jerk bait as well, where you have a bait that you can keep in one spot, I can see it, and now I can also watch fish reacting to it around that, and that's what you want to do.
And then you can tinker. I can change the color, the size, the speed, the twitching, all these different things until I start seeing fish get more interested and I start getting bites, but I can watch it happen, whereas if I didn't have forward-facing sonar, I'm guessing and checking, and I'm like, there may not even be a fish there. I wouldn't even know.
What's ideal for a forward-facing sonar bait? We should probably address that first. So there's like 5 things that are really important for a bait to, or a lure, or a technique to be good for forward-facing sonar. 1, it's got to pop on screen. So how does a bait actually pop on screen?
Because some are too small, or you have to cast them so far that it's outside the range of what's useful for forward-facing sonar.
So I'll reference our buddy Ben Nowak. He had a Wired to Fish article on this. You guys can Google that. Maybe we'll link it in the description below. We're just talking about like if you really get your forward-facing sonar dialed in, you can like crystal clear see things 60 feet out. So if you're within 60 feet, or for us people who aren't dialed in within like 40 or 30 feet, then we can actually see that. So if you're too far out, you're not seeing it. So it's got to be close-ish, like 30 feet-ish, 30, 40 feet. And you got to have your electronics dialed in if you want to get the good image, if you want to be able to see it. You got to be aiming in the right direction because it is forward-facing sonar, not sideways or downwards facing. So you got to be like aiming at your bait, and you need to be able to find that. So what makes a bait easier to find? One thing is density.
And this is something that we picked up with ice fishing, and this is not new. This is old. This is like this is old technology. What they do with some of these jigs, David Gens makes these special jigs. They're square shaped with like a very rounded head, but it's a square shape, so it's hard, long edges.
Flat sides.
That gives more consistent edges to reflect off, and so you get a clearer picture. More density, like Jeff was talking about. The denser a bait, again, the more reflection you're going to get, and you're going to see it better on screen. So like tungsten
versus
and
lead.
Sometimes they can be smaller, but you can see them better because it's more dense. And again, if you add on to that, they're really square shaped. That can help you out quite a bit. So that's old technology used for ice fishing, and live imaging is like every sonar that you use for ice fishing. So we've seen this before.
Another thing you can look for is suspendable baits. If it's suspendable, like a jerk bait, which is why it came up as like one of the popular options, is why.
Or a drop shot.
Or a drop shot, just something where you can like position it statically in front of wherever your forward-facing sonar is. So I can find it.
Yeah, if you're moving the bait a lot from side to side, or it has to move up and down like quite a bit, sometimes you're gonna lose that bait. Or
you're chasing it with the camera.
Like a lipless can be really tough because you're gonna cast it super far. You won't see the retrieve for like 2/3 of that retrieve. It can be helpful in the short term, but it's not nearly as good as like a drop shot or even a glide bait where I'm not hucking it a million miles, and you get a much better, you can see it from more of the cast, so it's more useful with forward-facing sonar.
By the time you find it, you can't learn too much information from what's going on. You're already back at the boat and you're casting again.
So profile, I think, is important too. We talked about it with some of the sides, but like sometimes crankbaits are actually kind of hard to see. And they're kind of hard to differentiate from fish sometimes, because sometimes they're like these big blurs, and it almost looks like a fish, and then you realize like, oh my God, that's my bait. That's my bait. Now they are moving, so you just get that advantage, but the profile is really important because, again, crankbaits are a good example of something that they're not nearly as as easy to see as, for whatever reason, a small plastic. One example of that is actually this minnow. And we talked, oh God.
All right.
One example is this minnow. So you can see how flat the side of that is, and like it's not rounded at all. Like there's two sheer hard corners right here and at the bottom. So this is like a square, or like a rectangle, which makes it, again, a little bit easier to see, even though it's small. I mean, that's a super small profile, but it actually pops better on screen.
So one last thing that you really want to look for with something that's going to be good for your forward-facing sonar is going to be the fall rate. So if we already mentioned suspension because it's there statically,
Slow
and you can
sinking.
find it. If you have a slow sink, so something with a slower fall rate, or like what the Kredge, for example, is proposing, is that you're going to lift that up and it's going to slow fall back down.
And you can do it a bunch of times. You can repeat it in the same area, like a drop shot,
kind of yo-yoing, pendulating. It
Yep.
gives you time to find the bait is the point. And once you can actually see where that bait is, now I can look for the fish around it and see if they're actually keying in or not. Are they giving me attention, or are they not give a heck?
Yeah.
You know, because if they don't give a heck, then you switch out colors, actions,
Well, you
baits,
just, that's
whatever.
that's
Make a
probably
move.
the most valuable information for what's not working, because then you can try and tinker with it, and then you just keep changing one thing at a time until you get them dialed in.
Bottom line is, there's one word you need to know for forward-facing sonar specific lures and baits, and that is findability. It's like, can I find this thing on my sonar, or is it going to play hide and seek?
So what are some of the things that are already in existence that are not new, they've already been around, but just because of their features are already good for forward-facing sonar? Drop shot, jerk baits,
Strolling baits.
Strolling, any hover strolling, mid-strolling, whatever. And then some of these, like anything that suspends. So that could be a jerk bait, but that could also be some sort of plastic. We talk about the hover strolling.
Ball head jigs with like minnow baits and paddle tails and whatever. With that horizontal line tie position is always ideal. So it's sitting like this instead of vertically.
And then on the flip side, you get your glide baits. And I feel like I've learned more glide bait fishing with forward-facing sonar than I could have learned in 5 years without it. So those are some of they're already in, even like Ned rigging. Also on the bottom, because when you hop it off the bottom, in some cases jigging, but this is more like finesse jigging, not necessarily power. There's usually too much grass or cover for you to really pick out what you're doing with it. So I think clear water situations,
rocky bottoms,
more open water. So those are some of, they're already out there. They're already in existence. So let's go back to the Berkeley example. They're saying I'm making baits specifically designed to be more successful with forward-facing sonar, with using science only.
Using science specifically.
So so they got their new 3 baits. Let's go through each one of these, and this is just an example. A lot of people are doing this, so you can do the same thing with any brand. I'm not trying to pick on, but they are the ones who were like, we planted the flag, and so we're just going to use them because they're there.
And we're going to fish these baits. So
100%.
we're not just going to say this and just be a bunch of hot air on the internet. We're going to go buy these baits, and then we're going to go fish these baits.
100%.
And we'll be like, okay, did that perform better than any bait in this technique category from another company that didn't say forward-facing sonar specific?
Sure.
Is it better or not, right? Because that's really what I want to see.
What do you want to start with, Kredge?
Kredge.
So let's start with the Kredge from Berkeley. So the backwards jerkbait. We'll put the little video in here so you can see what it looks like. It's basically, so cool. But it is really cool. It's a upside down lip, and it's moving backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. So let's like apply our logic to this example. So is it a new technique? Sort of. It's a twist on a current, right? So it's taking a regular jerkbait
and flipping the lip up.
Yep, so now it's actually even more static. So you can use like a faster sink rate, or you can use this as an alternate to a jerkbait, and it's going to act differently. But does the bait itself actually reflect better on screen? Or does it in some way show up more clearly so that you can cast it further or deeper or anything like that, where it's now I'm taking better advantage because the way the bait itself is designed, am I taking better advantage of forward-facing sonar? Not really. In my opinion, in that case, not really. Compared to a jerkbait, I think they're going to show up pretty much the same. But I will say this, it's giving you a different tool in the toolbox for forward-facing sonar. So that one, I say total luck.
Landed on
they would have released this without forward-facing sonar, 100%. But now they can say that it works well with forward-facing sonar. So I'd say not outright marketing BS, but like a nice worlds colliding scenario that you just happen to get a bait that does work well on forward-facing sonar and is also just a good, cool, little bit different action. Next up would be, which one do you want to do next? You want to do the
power switch.
power switch. So that's the plastic. So it's like a less finny version of the Dark Sleeper, the Megabass Dark Sleeper, which we're holding up right here.
But where this is meant to really be fished more on the bottom, that is intended to be mid-strolling technique.
And the difference is where you tie in the weight distribution. So the weight distribution is all in the front. That keeps it down low, and when you pull it, the whole bait gets pulled this way, and it gets pulled sort of that way. With anything that's more hover strolling, mid strolling, the weight, the attachment point is going to be like right here, more towards the hook point, more towards the middle, with some weight towards the head. That keeps it level, and it's going to fall more levelly, and when you twitch it, it's going to roll side to side just a little bit, and it's not going to move very far.
I think this is a bait that I'm actually excited to try out, and I will give them a
5. I think it's a little bit behind the Credge, like just a hair closer to not legit innovation, but still different. So I don't know if I've seen, I'm not saying they're not out there, I just haven't seen any or many of pre-rigged hover strolling / mid-strolling baits. So there's a ton of ways to make your own. And there are custom jigs and hooks and plastics for this kind of technique that have been around for a long time. It's new to us in the US. It's not necessarily new because like in Japan, China, like over there, they've been doing this for a lot longer. So the hover strolling technique. So this is the first one I've seen pre-rigged, like on mass market that I know of. So I would give them the edge. Just a little, it's like a 4 out of 10. And it's not that it's good or bad. It's like, was the innovation designed for forward-facing sonar? It was designed for a technique that already exists for forward-facing sonar. The only innovation, one of the only points of real innovation was that it's pre-rigged versus not pre-rigged. So I give this like maybe a 3 or a 4 out of 10. Yes, it's designed for forward-facing sonar, but so is the drop shot. And so I put that in that category.
The last one that they had is this finisher, right? So the finisher, they define it as a crankbait, right? And it's a flat side crankbait.
With no lip.
With no lip. It's not a shape that I haven't seen before, like a design that I haven't necessarily ever seen before. In fact, we
just got one with a top hook called the Glimmer, the Glimmer 6, Glimmer 7, which is basically a hard bait, hover strolling, mid strolling bait, already on its own, which this is kind of that. The weights are different, so it's a little bit unique, but I don't think there's anything about the design of the bait to pop on screen better, and I don't think it's a technique that's anything hyper unique. Like these are in existence already. They may not be like super common, and it is technically a new bait, but I don't think that this is probably the one that I give the low, maybe tied. I think I'm going to put this at the 4. I'll put this at the 4. Yeah, I think so.
So I would also do that. I'd give it a 5.5 with the power switch. Again, just on stuff that we've seen on the internet, right? And what we know to be true about forward-facing sonar. So we're just going off of that experience and then views from other folks that are not sponsored by Berkley. Let's talk about some things that are like new techniques or new innovations that really are successfully popping on sonar.
They show up on the screen better, or the actual physical traits of the bait are designed to give you an advantage with forward-facing sonar, or it's a totally new technique that actually gives you an advantage with forward-facing sonar and was designed like sort of because of forward-facing sonar, not the flip side where it's like, well, everyone's talking about forward-facing sonar, we're going to market it like it is.
We're going to slap FF on everything. Now, we're not going to name every brand that does this right now at all. So we'll call out, first of all, just new to the US for the most part, Strolling, right? Anything Strolling is going to work really well on your forward-facing sonars. A few specific things that we picked up recently that we're going to test out from the JDM market. We got the Fish Arrow Flash J.
Which is an old bait. It's been around for a long time.
New to us.
New to us, though.
New to us as in US. So stuff like that. Anything Strolling, you're going to be good. So technique-wise, go Strolling if you want something that's going to be good on sonar.
Yeah, or that core tackle hover rig, right? Utilizing that jig, it allows you to utilize a lot of different plastics and in a unique way that's new to, again, to us, but not new to the fishing world, but new to us, that really does help. It gives you a nice way to target fish on forward-facing sonar.
If you want like a really inexpensive way to get into it, just go with like the ball head jig paired with a type of minnow lure. So that Yum forward-facing sonar lure, we're gonna call this out as like a good option. Those flat sides, just taking like your general plastic minnow and just flat sides instead of fully rounded.
Again, it's giving you more real estate, consistent real estate to get a reflection from your transducer unit, and that is gonna help it pop. One that we were interested in that we may have to try, there's like what company was it?
Bait Pop.
Bait pop, yeah. So it's like
it's a
gel that you apply to your bait and maybe even to your line that helps. I don't know if it does, but
we're gonna test this too.
Purported to help you get a better reading from your bait when you dunk it in the water. So I think that is the 10 out of 10, like the best example I've seen yet of like it's a new thing. It is designed to help you get more out of your unit or more out of your bait to make your unit work better for you. That's cool. It's a good idea.
I hope it doesn't just make everything all goopy.
Yeah, it might just get nasty. I'm not saying it works great, but that concept I think fits way more where I'd feel comfortable as a company saying I designed this for forward-facing sonar versus like a plastic where it's like, oh, this just happens to work well with forward-facing sonar, so I'll slap it on there. That's marketing BS to me.
So at the end of the day, like this is not a Berkley bashing video. We're obviously going to test all these products. Again, the whole point of that 1 to 10 scale was so that we could identify, hey, was this like truly designed to be innovative in the forward-facing sonar market, or was it a lure that happened to like pop?
It just happened to work well.
It popped on forward-facing sonar, and therefore we put FF on it, and now we make some money.
Exactly.
We're gonna make a lot of money.
And I'm gonna sell it to you better because I said it was forward-facing sonar, not all jerkbaits would show up great. So did the Credge. Forward-facing sonar. Like,
bottom line, what's the big question we're trying to answer here? Is the forward-facing sonar market of lures BS? I think it's half and half.
And I think it's trying to help you parse that apart. So if you're a forward-facing sonar, you own forward-facing, or maybe you're seeing all these baits come on and you're like, do I need forward-facing sonar? And you're trying to make that decision. We're trying to give you some tools to parse the BS from the very legit, because some of it is, I think, very legit. Like even the Credge, I know I was just joking about it, but like it is different and it's a little twist. So I can't give it a 0. You give it somewhere in the middle, right? Or even maybe a little bit more because it's totally new and it works really well with forward-facing sonar. It should. So, you know, you got to pick through that, and it gets kind of dicey when companies are pumping the marketing machine at you and trying to make you make decisions based on that, not on the foundations of how it's going to work in the water.
You got to look for consistency in this and your sources. So are your sources sponsored by Berkley and therefore saying that the Berkley baits are the best, or are they not sponsored by Berkley and saying they're the best? I would, obviously weight heavily towards the non-sponsored one. And then I would also look for consistency. Like, are they consistently fishing these, or do they talk about one technique and then never ever talk about it again?
Like the pros. I caught all of my fish with only the Berkley Maxent.
Exactly. We don't, what you got to parse the truth from the, false statements out there. So ultimately, all we're trying to do with this video is give you guys some information to make your own better decisions. And that's really what it's all about. So do your own research, figure out what works for you. These are our opinions, Spaceman. And we're going to back them up by going out on the water and testing all these things out. So if you guys want to see how that goes for us, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and then come back to some of our lives every Wednesday, 8:15 p.m. Eastern. We'd love to see you there and talk to you in chat. All right, let's get out of here.
Parkour. Oh, you went the wrong way. Glide.